Welcome to Solo Progression, the series where I play through Dungeon Defenders 1 Redux with the goal of beating the crystalline dimension on the hardest difficulty, as well as completing all the achievements. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Solo Progression. On this episode, we'll be going on to Aquanos, the third map of the Lost Shards DLC. Personally, I love the design of this map. I think the Lost Shards DLC maps really are great designs, but usually the bosses for these maps are much more difficult than the original bosses. I have a lot of issues with the boss on this map, but we'll get to that when we get to the end of the attempt here. But until then, let's talk about the two new enemies. We have the Sharkin and the Fish Wyverns. The Fish Wyverns are basically the same as regular Wyverns, but specific to this map, or any other. I think they're on one other map that's also a bit water-based. As you can tell, this map is all underwater-based and underwater themed, which visually looks pretty nice. The second enemy I'm going to talk about is the Sharkins. Sharkins have very similar HP to Orcs, but they are also capable of pushing out defenses and moving them out of the way so they can get through, or just doing a lot of damage to the defenses. These enemies aren't too difficult to deal with if you have an aura stack or maybe even gas traps, both of which become pretty vital to have in your defenses on these harder difficulties. So they aren't much of a problem for me, but if you don't have an aura stack, you can see them becoming a problem because they will charge and push away all your defenses in the line. The nice thing with Sharkins is that they will spawn at any spawn point in the map rather than having their own fixed spawn points similar to how the Jinn and the Spider spawn, which makes them easier to handle. Essentially, they're just a bigger, stronger orc that you have to deal with now, which isn't too big of a deal. It's only hard if you don't have something to counter them, which is like the aura stacks and gas traps, but you're going to have the aura stacks regardless of what difficulty you're playing on because they're just so good. Now, on Aquanos, there are 5 choke points on this map you need to defend, but also you need to be ready for fish wyverns that spawn. If you look at the top crystal, you'll see I placed down a bunch of archers and firebolt towers to deal with that. Overall, this map has a very easy setup because you have 165 DU, I believe, or 160 DU to manage all the towers. So basically, get an aura stack in every lane, get a tower buff beam, get some firebolt towers, get some archers, get some reflect beams, some physical beams, whatever you want. You'll have enough DU to place whatever you want down, and it should be enough to clear out the map. The issue more line comes with the boss fight that I will show very briefly here because you'll see it does not go very well on my first attempt. The boss of Aquanos is a Kraken. This Kraken fight is very difficult without having high resistance in lightning or general damage, and having high HP would help a lot. I set aside some aura stacks and some minions, but still that was not enough to beat it this time. The Kraken has 3 basic attacks. It has basic melee attacks, it has a needle projectile, and a water ball attack, as well as it gets access to a few more attacks when you are able to destroy the tentacles. And since I didn't have enough resistances or high enough HP to tank this boss, I died, so I'm going to go to another level to farm some better armor. That level being Mistymire Forest on Survival, doing on Insane mode. Now I believe we're doing Insane Mixed Mode Survival, and I hope it's getting better gear. The reason why I did this is because the survival maps on the Lost Shards DLC have more than 25 waves, and every 5 waves you get incrementally better things, better drops I should say. And the reason why I want to do this map is one of the only ones I can do besides Morago, and I feel like I should just go in order for the survival maps on these. So I go here, I push the setup more north again in that top spot, and I consider the spiders. I've also made sure each lane has a tower buff beam, some fireballs, towers, all aura stacks, and archers, as well as I believe one of the lanes has deadly bolt or deadly striker towers to deal with the ogres that spawn in that wave, as well as some magic missile towers due to the extra DU we have set aside. One thing you may notice that the waves go pretty fast on this map. That's due to the fact that even if you have 4 characters on the field, the max amount of enemies per wave is a little bit less than 2,000, which really helps speed up the farming process on this map. And you're always going to get enough drops to max out the amount of drops you're getting. But for the most part, pretty sit back, pretty chill. Was able to kind of just like watch YouTube while I was doing this on the side, as well as not have to really consider anything because I believe only 1 ogre spawns per wave after a certain point on this map, which makes it super easy. But I'll usually just have to move Leon to where the ogre is to be able to deal with that in a quick manner and make sure my defenses are safe. But on wave 15, we receive a first reward, which is 4 mythical quality Shroomite pets. Some of which of these are pretty big upgrades over the current giraffes we have on our builders, so I swapped those out and put them on them instead. I believe our summer gets one, I believe our series EV might get one. It doesn't matter too much, we will be farming better pets for all these characters in a little bit. Now skipping ahead a bit, I am going to wave 30, the final wave on this map. I'm going to show you the entirety of the wave so you can see how fast it really is. In sped up, it's about a minute. But over when it's not sped up, it's about 4 minutes per wave, which is really fast, because you'll see on some of the other maps that it takes upwards to like 6-7 minutes just to finish out a wave because of how many things are spawning and how long you get to wait for your defenses to deal with them, or they just spawn far away. This is a really great map, and same with all the other Lost Shards DLC maps. They don't have too many enemies spawning at once. The drafts I end up getting from the end of Wave 30 were pretty meh. I looked at them, but I believe none of them were mythical, and the ones I got from the Wave 15 were actually better than the ones I got on Wave 30, so nothing useful for the Kraken. But I made sure on my Monk I upgraded my general lightning resistance for the Kraken to 90%, since that's the only damage that they can do. And we're going to try that again here in a second and see if we can get past the boss this time. So my setup this time for Aquanos is pretty much the same as before, but I added more minions, a better aura stack, and I made sure everything was upgraded in the spot where I was going to be fighting the Kraken. The fight started off well, was able to break down some tentacles and actually get some good damage on it, but all of a sudden I was hit by one of the water balls and instantly died due to not having enough HP, I imagine. That attack just does so much damage. I have full resistances for this boss, and it just ate through all my HP and just ended my fight so instantly. And this boss is really frustrating to attempt like this, so I decided to go with a different method that would more rely on a consistent way to beat it rather than trying to dodge things. Like, I really can't see what's going on when I'm doing these fights because there's just so much going on my screen. So I decided to resort to a different method of attacking the boss, and we'll see that here in attempt number 3. So in attempt number 3, I restarted the whole run and made sure not to use any minion units in each of my choke points. The summoner units are the only units that can attack the Kraken, so instead of using those for my regular waves, I'm going to place them where the Kraken spawns. You can use defenses like Deadly Striker Towers and Fireball Towers, but they will not directly attack the Kraken. They can hit them if there's like another unit behind them that they're targeting, but that's not just feasible because they'll be dying to the auras behind them. It's just not going to work, and the Kraken will likely destroy those towers anyway. So you see, while I'm placing on the ground here, is I'm placing all my ogres, mages, and archer units right where the boss spawns in hopes of basically surrounding the Kraken and just having it do the damage itself. I have no other characters on field, so the Kraken will always target these minions, and the Kraken will not attack the summoner due to the fact that I'm in Overlord mode, which is basically like this phase through thing that you can't be seen in. So basically, once the Kraken spawns, it is surrounded by the ogres and the mages and the archers from afar, but there is a bit of a difficulty in making sure the Kraken only hits the ogres and not the weaker minions with its attacks. Also, I had issues with having the ogres actually attack the Kraken. Some of the issues that I've had with this is that the archer minions, the mage minions, and ogres all kind of sort of clump together, which isn't useful for this boss fight because the Kraken can't all of them at once. The ideal plan is having all the ogres basically right next to the Kraken and kind of keeping in place, and then having the mages and archers attack and having the mages heal as well is very useful for this boss fight. I also want to keep the ogres basically surrounding it in the same spot, so it would stay in the Strength Drain aura, which if it wasn't in the Strength Drain aura, it would practically one-shot everything but the ogres, but it would still do a ton of damage for the ogres. It's like almost a 5-hit kill on those guys. But one thing to note too is that when the Kraken's tentacles breaks, its shard gets exposed, and it'll also spray poison out of its mouth while making itself very fast. This poison will basically destroy all the weak minions kind of like right away. So dealing with that is difficult, but basically you got to make sure the ogres are placed in front of it. Ultimately on this attempt, I do not make it through. And there was a couple times too when the shard was exposed, but the minions just couldn't hit that sweet spot on the shard to do more damage. So basically I'm like waiting for the Kraken to open his mouth and have the minions attack it all at once, but sometimes they just weren't attacking or they were just not hitting the spot they needed to hit, which was infuriating, but ultimately I lose this attempt, but I will give it another go using the same strategy. I think on this next strategy I will use the new Redux mod, or rebalance mod I should say, to get the Spider Queen minions as well. Now these Spider Queen minions eat up 30 DU, but they are very strong. They have attacks that hit multiple times and just have a good amount of HP, but it's at the cost of 30 DU, so I'd have to have less of other minions as well. That said, I do go and try and use this summoner only method again, since my other heroes just die too quickly. I don't have enough health on the monk, And the issue with that is I don't want to grind out a bunch of hero health levels, and I don't really want to reset my stats anyway on that guy, so I'm going to just try this method again and see if it works. Essentially, I'm placing everything the same as before, but this time I have some reflect beams, some tower buff beams, and I believe I have a few more strength drain auras as well to deal with the boss. Some of the archers and mages I've placed on the buff beams just so they get increased damage, and make sure reflect beams are from them as well to hopefully block off some of the damage from the mist ball attack, the needle attack, because those just do so much damage, and just having it be reflected would help a lot. And one of the nice things with the summoner is that since I'm remotely controlling these minions, I'm able to heal them using flash heal. So flash heal works on overload mode is that wherever your mouse is, it'll use that ability there, which is really useful for this map because I can heal all my minions at once with flash heal rather than having to repair them or upgrade them. And like that said, you don't want to repair any minions on this map unless you really have to, because the repair is so slow compared to upgrading, which is always a set speed for everything you're upgrading. So it's definitely worth it to upgrade a minion rather than repair a minion if you have upgrade available, as well as having enough mana to do that upgrade. Now, I believe I started with only one Spider Queen minion, but as the fight progressed, I would add more Spider Queens when my minions would eventually do die. So I would have multiple Spider Queens up, as well as a bunch of ogres. And as soon as the fight starts, there is one thing that I noticed is that basically the Kraken went after the tower buff beam archers and mages and killed them all pretty much immediately, which was infuriating to say the least. I thought I lost right away, but luckily I didn't have to do this again because I was able to actually be able to beat it this time using the Spider Queens, and the ogres basically kept it in place. Sometimes the boss would kind of just fly off up in the air and I couldn't attack it, which was super annoying. Kraken boss is not one of it's probably my least favorite of the 4 bosses in this. It is definitely the most finicky to deal with. It's definitely easier if you're playing as a Huntress though, because the Huntress can go invisible and it cannot be targeted by the Kraken, which is quite useful when you're doing boss rush modes, but for this, if you do that, it'll just attack other things. So, it's not going to help us here. We don't have a Huntress anyway, but we were able to beat it, which opens up some possibilities for what we can do. Hopefully, if you've seen the strategy and we're having trouble with Aquanos, you can use the summoner strategy in your games to see if you can beat it with this. But now that we beat it on this difficulty on Insane Hardcore, we're able to farm it on Survival for a fantastic pet that we'll be using for the next map. And right now, we're not going to be showing off a stat check, since stats are pretty similar. But once we get to Nightmare mode, I'll be showing off my stats again, and we can go from there. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you guys had a Merry Christmas, and get out of here. Have a nice day.